And welcome in to TD Ryan Unleashed, our brand new podcast here, coming at you from the bowels of the DeKalb Public Library. And honored and thrilled to have with me right now my old colleague from our former radio station, Dan Lynch. Dan, how you doing this morning?
Real well. Miss you, TD. We worked together 4 years.
Yeah, boy,
Every
and it was a
day.
great time. You know, you say you don't know what you have until it's gone, unfortunately, and I never realized how great a gig we had there until it was over, but the outpouring of love that we've had, you know, we're hearing the Beatles song right now, you say goodbye, I say hello, and unfortunately we didn't get a good chance to say goodbye to folks that listen to us, but we have an opportunity to say hello again here with a different format, a podcast, and I'll be honest with you, Dan, I kind of made light of podcasts when you and I are on the radio, but I've learned more and more about them, and it's really a great way to go.
Yeah, it's kind of vague to me. It's the Wild Wild West. I mean, I think every guy under 70 has a podcast in the world.
Yeah.
You and I were the last holdouts. So it's a little, and there are so many platforms. I mean, you've got YouTube and SoundCloud and this and that, and I'm sort of overwhelmed. And but there are layoffs all over terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
Industry wide, mostly in the big corporations. The ma and pops are doing well, but or seem to be doing well. Most of them, anyway. So, you know, when we were in high school, the economy was different.
Yeah.
I knew a guy who was a phone book salesman. He sold advertising and phone books. But radio was the go-to, and there was TV and radio and print, and that was it.
Yeah. That's like another time we missed those times here. And of course, we wanted to thank all the people that have been responsive to us after our debacle there at the radio station. So many people have reached out to us and sent us cards and letters. And the cards really mean the most to me, Dan, for somebody to take the time to write a card, mail it. And then, of course, we were talking off the air about some nice lady sent us not only a card, but money to take our significant others out to dinner.
Yeah, I opened this card, and there's a nice note in there, and there's like $50 or $100. I mean, I was blown away. She doesn't know me. I was just a voice on the radio, and so I was really touched. But we connected with people, and
Yeah, she said that we were a guest in her breakfast room every morning. You know, I never thought about that, but she had us there in the breakfast room every morning, and it was a great way to think of that.
the morning show was a real gem. I mean, you paid attention to a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't get publicity. You would have children on. You were great with children. We had all the public officials on, or quite a few of them, and that was of interest to the community. So it was a useful, friendly morning show.
And that's what we hope to do, kind of recreate that here on a more specific basis, because we don't have to break for commercials and things like that, which is nice here. But again, we want to thank all the people that supported us here. I had a nice gentleman, Carl Heinisch, which a lot of people in DeKalb would know that name. He explained to me, either you're a Heinisch or a favor when it comes to being in the DeKalb area. But he wanted to take me out to lunch. I was honored just to have him take me out to lunch. But we went over to the Sycamore Cafe, and we were having lunch, and we got up to leave, and there was about an 8-top next to us. And one of the ladies said, "Are you TD?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "We're all from the courthouse, and we listen to you guys every morning in the courthouse, and we miss you very much every morning." And just a moment like that, you know, but it really meant a lot. And she had recognized my voice from the other table and yelled over to us. And just to hear that just really means so much.
Really?
Yeah.
So where's the Sycamore Cafe? Is that near the courthouse?
No, it's down, where is it? Over by the Sycamore High School, almost across from the Sycamore High School.
Okay.
It's there.
All right.
But yeah, just one of those moments like that. So I want to thank you so much for that. And again, everybody I see on the street, first they ask me how I'm doing, and they say, "And how is Dan doing?" So how are you doing these days?
Oh, I got 5 kids. I'm married, and I don't get a lot of peace. And I'm playing a lot of pool, doing a lot of weightlifting because my oldest son wants to work the bench.
All right.
A lot of exercise. Looking for a job every day. I've had interviews, and I have another one coming up for some radio stations near Indiana. I don't want to move out of the area. I have a mortgage. My kids like it here. They like DeKalb. They like their church here, and they have a lot of friends here. So I'm not moving.
Uh-huh.
I have to probably work 10 or 15 more years before I'm financially independent. But I want to thank the men and women who've approached me. I got a nice phone call from Jim Winters, now former police chief.
Right.
Of Sycamore. Andy Sullivan called, and, I mean, these are busy people, taking the time to call me. I got a nice text from Jeff Kiker.
All people we're going to have on the show, by the way. Yeah.
Carl Heinisch reached out to me through another person that I know. And my heart is full of gratitude, TD, because, I mean, I'm just, it was just a radio show, but all of the goodwill that you fostered over the years with the food drives, twice a year, and all of those games you were broadcasting, those were of local interest, and now that's cut off. And so hopefully you can recreate that.
Yeah, just so abrupt there, too. And of course, one of the things we used to play on the morning show all the time when somebody said they moved away and came back, or they went to Northern and ended up living here, was the old Indian lore that if you dip your toe in the Kishwaukee River, you always come back. And I learned working with you that you grew up in Maple Park, just a stone's throw from here. And what was that like growing up in a small town in America? Well, I envy that so much because having gone to Niles West where we had 1,200 kids in our graduating class, it's just like I want to go to school where there's 200 people in my class.
I didn't appreciate it, really. I mean, I liked it, and I enjoyed my childhood, and it was a lot of riding around on my bicycle with friends and
Think of the freedom you had then as opposed to
playing
now.
baseball, walking railroad track. A lot of railroad tracks in my youth. I mean, walking the tracks. I'm sure you did it.
Oh, yeah, we had one right by our house. We built a fort underneath the railroad tracks. If Mom and Dad knew about that, they would have killed us. But seemed like a logical thing to do at the time. Let's build a fort underneath the railroad tracks.
There's got to be more miles of track in Illinois, especially in the Chicago area, than in any part of the country. So and not everything I did was good.
Well, how about hopping a train? Because I was the youngest of four boys, and I remember the nuns told us that they all told the story about little Jimmy trying to hop a train, and Jimmy got his leg cut off. And I never hopped the train. My brothers would do it, and I'd wait for them to come back, but never worked up the nerve to hop it on that train, even when it was going about 5 miles an hour. But always remember that story with the sister telling us about the boy who lost his legs trying to hop on the train. So the nuns knew what they were doing, where they put that fear in you there, and it worked.
Yeah, I never went that far either. I would have been quite scared. But small town.
Did you go to a Catholic school,
it was
or?
pleasant. No, I went to public schools.
Okay.
My older brother and sisters, when they were in Chicago, which is where we moved from before I was born. Yeah, they went
Southsider, right?
They went to St. Isidore's and whatever. But when they moved out to the country, and in the 70s, Maple Park was the country. My dad said, well, these schools out here are pretty peaceful. So I went to, Maple Park Elementary and then Canlan.
Was it trouble getting to and fro? Because my lovely wife, Becky, her older brother, she had 10 kids in their family. But he wanted to play sports, but he wasn't able to get back to the school, get a ride back and forth from school. So he was limited in how much sports he could play. Was that the case with you?
For me, yeah, I had to bum a ride from.
Oh, you did? Okay.
For football practice, for track. There was a player bus that would take you from Canlan to the little village of Maple Park. Same with Elburn and Sugar Grove and Caneville, and so I'd have to call my parents from a payphone and I'd click.
Yeah, the old that we did.
Yeah,
I used to say, pick me up and then hang up real quick and get the quarterback.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because if you made a collect call, my dad
Oh, yeah.
wouldn't be happy.
Remember long distance? Remember it was a big deal? This is a long distance call. It's like,
So I didn't like it for that reason. I had a cousin John in the city. We're the same age. He had books and he had a mini bike.
Oh.
I said, John, how did you get all this stuff? And he's 14, 15. He said, I walked down to the restaurant. I bust tables. See, living in the country, you couldn't do that.
No.
So,
Now, you husk some corn because I've learned from people, even my
Yeah.
stepsons, they were still husking corn. Now, that sounds like a miserable job.
detasseling, it was kind of toilsome, but it was fun because you were with your friends.
Uh,
And so there's jokes and giggling and,
I know a lot of people in the area know, but describe that because you told me once you get out there in the morning, so it's wet and damp, right? And so you've got, and then you got the little bag lunch with you, and then it's going to start heating up as the day progresses, right?
yeah, I would wear a headband around my neck because the leaves of the corn are kind of sharp and they will scratch your neck. And in the morning, yeah, you're soaking wet on a July morning with the dew and it's cold and your clothes are wet, but it burns off quick.
And then you get the other extreme.
Yes, and it's brutally hot, and you bring a big lunch in a cooler with, whatever you got at home, and
But how about that early work ethic, Because I worked at a hot dog stand when I was 15. It was through high school, actually. It was a work program through school. But I think it really helped me to responsibility and, have to go to work and you can't do this and you have to keep your grades up if you want to keep your job. I mean, a lot of motivation to working during high school.
yeah, and for me, living with my parents, and they paid for everything, I mean, my profit margin was 99%,
I never thought about the profit margin when you were a
buy a
kid.
brand new set of golf clubs. I remember my buddy was buying golf clubs, and he said, "What are you doing with your money?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm not sure."
I don't need anything right now.
But
Yeah.
you'd work 10 or 12 days in the summer, and that was it.
Right.
And DeKalb Genetics would issue you a check, and so that was handy. That
Sure.
was real handy, and that's how I started my bank account.
And what was the next gig after that, your next job?
Man, my next job after that, I think I was working for Wasco Nursery, which was on Route 64 when you're heading.
I know where it is. I think it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah, an old business, and that
More
was-
manual labor. Huh?
Yeah, in high school, and then I think later I got a job at a print shop, and then later I got a job at a radio station, or an internship in Chicago on a talk show. Got my first job, I think, in St. Charles, Geneva,
Really?
on an AM station, 1480, and it was oldies, and that's where I discovered Sam Cooke music. I was a board op for a syndicated oldies show.
Okay. I remember saying Bruce Channel. It was, if people don't know the song, Hey Baby, it's Bruce Chanel. And one of the first oldie station I worked at, I said, here's Bruce Channel with Hey Baby. But you learned so much about music working at those stations like that.
Well, I did, yeah, because my father was European. My mother was from the ghetto, and she didn't, she was having babies. She didn't listen to music. I'd ask her about Elvis, and she didn't really know, or the Beatles.
That's when I asked my wife about music in the 70s. She goes, I don't know, I was busy having babies, so I was busy having babies.
Yeah.
So, certainly a priority there.
When I heard this music, TD, like I heard the Coasters, and Dave Clark 5, and Sam Cooke, and Paul Anka, who wrote some major hits.
Great music.
When he was 16 years old. And it was extraordinary. It was melodic. It was fun. And
So is that when you were on the radio? Would you have a night shift or something? What was your first shift there?
Yeah, it was on until midnight, and sometimes till 2 in the morning, depending on if the overnight guy would show up. Like a lot of Americans, I loved sports, and I wanted to be a sportscaster.
Right.
Everybody wants to do sports. And I just had this attitude of I want to do everything in the station. I want to be a news person. I'll do sports. I'll be a disc jockey.
And you and I have both done that. I've had
Yeah.
every job in radio, and that's when we tell the young people. We have a young gentleman that we were training. Tell them to learn everything, right? Because even now, that's still a way to go. Because you can jump in. I mean, you were a jock, and then you did news, right? And I did news, sports. I know, it's great to get your hands in a little bit of everything like that.
Yeah, I did talk shows. Talk was a challenge in that you really had to prep out the show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of reading, a lot of research. In the big markets, when I was an intern in Chicago, there was a staff of people. One person just answered the phones and screened the calls. One person just ran the board. The host would just host the show.
Yeah.
The co-host, there was an engineer in with the host in the talk studio. So smaller towns, they don't have the money for that overhead, so you have to do everything. But it was fun, and you got into a rhythm, and
And you learn so much, I used to, we used to have the UPS teletype machine. And stuff and stories would come over there, and it was so exciting to see what brand new news was coming, across the teletype machine. Now, of course, that's dated, but of course, then, you were on the cutting edge of news.
yeah, there was, I was working one night, and this was in 95, Selena had gotten shot.
Oh, that's right.
A singer, a Tejano singer. I heard about that on the AP Wire. And a lady calls up the radio station, and she said, "Has Celine Dion been shot?"
Oh,
And I said, "No, her name is Selena. She's from Mexico." Which, and then later they made a movie, and that's
Right.
J-Lo.
J-Lo played her, that's right.
Became so I would hear major story. Now that wasn't like John F. Kennedy, but that was how you got your information.
Yeah. Well, my proudest moment at our former radio station was there was a snowstorm going on, and somebody had called in and said that they were stuck on a road out in the plains out there, and the police were busy. Obviously, there was a snowstorm going on, so the police weren't able to send anybody out there. And so a farmer who was listening to us on the radio knew exactly what we were talking about when this person described where they were. It was a lady and her daughter, and he took a snowmobile, went out there, and got them, saved them both, brought them both back home. And they said, realistically, the police said they wouldn't have been able to get to them for a couple hours, and they were almost out of gas. That was the other thing. So I learned the power of radio just through that little story where this guy, he's listening to us on the air. Here's these people call into us and describe where they're at. Then he hops on a snowmobile and goes and saves them. I mean, to me, that was the height of being on the radio. It just really made me realize that this can be a pretty important thing sometimes, to be on the radio.
Yeah. So,
And then I met a lot of people that we keep company. When said the one person who wrote the letter said that we were their guest every morning and for breakfast every morning. To think of you and I being their guests, very nice to think of it that way.
yeah, it was. And are you going to apply any? Are you going to look?
This is my note. I am now a podcaster. I'm podcaster Pete now because I realize I can do so much more this way. And plus, people don't have to listen to us from in the morning when we're on. Now they can listen to us anytime they want.
Yeah.
We're going to be putting this on YouTube and other stuff. So I know people my age, I just turned 65, and I fought technology for years, but I'm kind of embracing it now because I realize all the stuff we can do with this podcasting. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I had a lot of people call me, but I'm sure you had tenfold since you've been in this market so long. I mean, did you have just random people calling you?
Yes. Again, and trying to decide what you want to do. God, doing the same thing for 25 years, it's so tough to all of a sudden say, I got to do something else. But it helps when people are there offering to help you, That's great. Now, I wanted to mention your time in Colorado because my first radio job was in Deer Trail, Colorado, which is about 40 miles outside of Denver. And they're known because when drones first came, they passed an ordinance that you could shoot a drone down. It was over your property. Now, this is right when the first drones were being first built. Now, you were from Colorado, so the eastern plains of Colorado is just flat. So there was a lot of ultralights flying out there, and then people started flying their drones. And so the people in the Deer Trail got fed up, and they said, if you see a drone, it was tongue-in-cheek, you could shoot the drone down. So I think they changed it. But I told you that story where the people running the radio station I worked at, they had a newspaper, they had a gas station, and they were farmers as well. And the wife was doing all the billing for all 4 operations there. And she had a nervous breakdown. That's a term we used to use in the 60s and 70s. But she literally had a nervous breakdown. And I came to work one Sunday morning, and we were off the air, and he said, sit down, I want to tell you something about radio. And he goes, the one thing you can count on radio is you could never count on anything in radio. And that was a lesson well learned there because once you know it, then I ended up losing what possibly my last job in radio in a similar fashion where the plug was just kind of pooled. And you knew going into this business, right, Dan, that happens. That they call it blowing up a radio station. Somebody buys it, they blow it up, they fire everybody and bring new people in.
True. This isn't the first time.
No.
And I moved out to Colorado because I was laid off in the Rockford market. I was an oldies jock there, and I loved that job. A lot of Motown and soul music in that market. And but they laid us off in 2008. I had a buddy who offered me a job outside of radio in Colorado.
Oh, is that how you got to
Sight
Colorado?
unseen.
Okay.
Yeah. So it pays to know people, and I said, well, let me think about it. I ended up taking a radio job in Kansas, and I didn't like it. So he called me up. He said, hey, how's your new job going in Kansas? I said, well, Kansas is it's a great state in a lot of ways, but man, the whole town smells like cow dung. And so I moved to Colorado, Western Slope, Montrose.
Yeah, the other side of the hills there, okay.
And I'm working for his company. He has a property management company. And then I got back into radio part-time and then eventually full-time for about 7 or 8 years in Colorado and the Grand Junction market. And it was, it's just like small-town Illinois. A lot of ranchers in Colorado and a lot of, a lot of transplant, a lot of people from Illinois out there.
A lot. Now, I lived in Denver for 5 years. I never went skiing. Did you ever ski when you were out there?
I didn't. I went to the mountains quite a bit, just because it was so fascinating for me, a flatlander. I wasn't interested in skiing. I've fallen a few times skiing, and I just wasn't interested in
Well, you find out, Val and Telluride, you find out some of the prices for a ski lift. It's like,
lift ticket was over $100.
Yeah.
For Telluride, it's probably $150 now. Telluride was fun. I mean, you'd encounter Hell's Angels. I did in Telluride. The motorcycle gang. You experience things that you would only experience in the movies.
Yeah.
Normally. But,
well, my sister was a Deadhead, a Grateful Dead fan, for folks that don't know, and she took me to 5 shows in 6 days, but 2 of them were in Red Rocks. If you know Denver at all, it's got a beautiful Coliseum built into the mountains. I'm sure you've been to shows there.
Right off of 470, yeah.
And then Telluride, we went to 3 shows in Telluride, too, and it was like, it's complete opposite of the Hells Angels, because people that go to Grateful Dead concerts are about as laid back as you can get, Everybody's just kicking back, looking for free tickets. I remember I went up there, and the little girl just put 2 little flowers on my cheeks that she had when I went there. But they're handing out, what's really hot, it was in July, and they're handing this water jugs going around, and I turned to my sister, and I go, there's something in this water jug. And it was mushrooms. They had the mushrooms. And I'm hitting off the jug thinking it's just water. And my sister's like, well, those are mushrooms. And so I learned a lot about but just beautiful out there. Boy, just absolutely gorgeous. But
yeah.
I never skied, though.
An expensive state to live in for me. I mean, it wasn't cheap. I mean, nothing's cheap anymore.
No.
I think the Deep South and maybe it's parts of the Midwest. But Colorado's an expensive state.
So from there, I hopped over to Ogallala, Nebraska. And biggest stick out there, 50,000 watt. Lake McConaughey is the largest man-made lake in America. And so John Madden's bus is coming through. John Madden,
Yeah.
and he didn't fly, so he always took the buses everywhere. So rumor has it, we're at the radio station, and they go, hey, John Madden's over at the gas station. He's going to go have some dinner at Ponderosa. There was a Ponderosa. So I'm great. So let's go over. So we just went over there. We didn't really have a company van, but I got my shirt on for the KOGA in Ogallala, Nebraska. And Madden refused to see us. He wouldn't talk to us.
Okay.
We're outside his bus, and they had brought the food into him. And I go 5 minutes. 5 minutes won't interrupt his dinner or anything, and totally shut us down. Hated John Madden after that. No, I always loved John Madden, but I couldn't believe that he wouldn't give us an interview. In a little Ho-Ducky town, but of course he did that all the time. Traveled across the country on his bus, but we thought for sure he would give us an interview. So I was always bitter about that. John Madden shooting us down in Ogallala.
Okay, I'm disappointed because I read a book about Ken Stabler, and I love those old Raider teams. And he was the coach.
Yeah.
When they made the playoffs every year for 20 years. So I'm disappointed to hear that.
I don't know. I wish I could.
This is why I do not approach celebrities. I was backstage at a Rolling Stones concert, and I was standing right next to Charlie Watts.
Yeah, the drummer.
Right next to him, and I'm thinking, he doesn't want to talk to me. I mean, he's...
And then you say to yourself, what do I possibly have to say that he would want to hear from me?
Yeah, but I was in the buffet line, and I was happy just just being a foot away from Charlie Watts,
Uh.
and Keith Richards was mingling like crazy, and Steven Tyler was there. Now, he was talking to us, and that was because this girl that I met backstage, she was brave, and she was a young college student, and she went up and talked to him, and he was a nice guy. I generally, I don't approach celebrities. Now, if you encounter a major celeb in this library, are you going to walk up and say, hey, can I have your autograph?
No, I certainly wouldn't do the autograph thing. And I'd want to say something significant as opposed to just, I love all your movies and stuff like that. But it's funny how we panic, though, with the celebrity. You want to say something interesting. You don't want to be like everybody else, But the hero worship I can do without. The followers, you and I were talking about podcasting and all this stuff, and influencers. And who are the people that are allowing themselves to be influenced? I mean, do I want to follow this guy? He's going to tell me how to dress. I'm going to follow this person to tell me what shampoo to use. It's just weird to allow yourself to follow an influencer, quote unquote. And people are making money being influencers.
I still don't, I'm not even sure what that is. I mean, when I hear an influencer, I hear someone with, I'm picturing somebody with a real annoying presence. And someone who's trying to get attention all the time.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm thinking of, but it could be totally different.
So you're not following anybody, it's safe to assume?
No, I mean, I know a guy who's an economist, or I listen to a guy who's an economist, but I think his worldview is interesting.
Okay.
Based on his Harvard education and the economy, but I don't.
But when you listen to a guy like that, is that going to change how you live your day-to-day life? Even though he knows he's brilliant, obviously, but is he giving you life's advice, or you just listen to him just to get his perspective?
Just to get his perspective.
Okay.
And he interviews interesting people, but it's not, there are no celebrities. I don't listen to Joe Rogan, or I'll see clips of Rogan on YouTube.
How do you account for his popularity? It's fascinating. I knew little about the guy. Now that I started the podcast, I've kind of learned about him. But I mean, he was a UFC fighter, and I don't know how he got the show started, but
well, he was on a sitcom called News Radio.
Oh, that's right.
Years
yeah.
ago. With Andy Dick was on that show, and
was it Phil Hartman?
Phil
right?
Hartman was on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
show.
he was brilliant. Yeah.
So, a lot of these successful podcasters, like Adam Carolla, there's a premise there. Carolla was a big star on the show Loveline, and then he had other shows on MTV. So Rogan was on a sitcom.
So that gets the name recognition. Okay. and then-
Yeah, or Sterling Sharp, or not Sterling Sharp.
Shannon Sharp. Yeah.
He was not as good as Sterling Sharp on the Packers, but Shannon Sharp, he's a big mouth. He was a great player for the Broncos.
He really was.
So that's why he's a notable podcaster, I guess.
Okay.
So I think that helps.
You got to have that name recognition. Yeah, that helps a lot. And I want to mention sports because I want to give you kudos. Folks that listen to the show in the morning would know that we talked to Dan about the fact that on Saturdays in the summertime you have a little pickup baseball game because I live for that. I just, I told you I grew up in an all-Jewish neighborhood, and it was me and two other Catholic families, so we would go and play baseball together, and the Jewish kids would go play baseball together. Never the twain shall meet, but
Really?
yeah, we
Not
played
together?
fast pitch. Remember fast pitch where you draw the strike zone on the building? Because we
Yeah.
were in Lincolnwood, so it was kind of a industrial area there where we were. But we paint that strike zone, and one guy pitched, the other guy hit, another guy fielded, so you could have three guys, you could have a good game going. And then you do the mystery. Remember you had the invisible runners when you did the invisible runner on first?
third,
Right, and you'd only hit the one side of the infield and stuff. But for the fact that you bring the kids together like that, and I'm sure your kids, tell us about it. Do they love the baseball when you get them together on Saturdays?
Well, I have a lot of kids, so I can't really get them all into organized sports, TD, because then I'm just schlepping kids across town constantly.
I hear that all the time, yeah.
And I'm already doing that. I take, we got piano, karate at Hayes Gym.
Oh, I'll see you over there. Great.
I'm there at night. You're probably not there.
Well, for folks that don't know, I'm going to be working the front desk at the Hayes Gym, and it'll be working all different hours. So maybe I'll see you in
Okay.
there.
Is that the one on Prospect and 9th?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. So I'm, karate and piano and Helen's in crochet, and they got youth group at the church. And then they wanted to do organized baseball, and I had to say, look, it's $165 a pop. Let's just start a league on Saturday. We practice for a half hour, then we do a game for an hour, and I'll pitch. So 20 kids showed up the first week.
Just neighborhood kids, just.
They're kids from the neighborhood, their friends. So and parents would come up to me and say, hey, this is great, because I don't have to take them to practice during the week.
Right.
Just on Saturday morning. So it's fun. And another parent, he brought some scrimmage mesh jerseys. So there's like a blue team and a red team. And I just teach them the basics, TD. I mean.
Well, I'm glad that you practice. I think that's great that you practice first, because all the kids want to just play the game, but you get them to practice. I love practice. I used to love practicing. And then I hope you let them hit, because I was one of those kids that was afraid, and I'd go up there and hope for a walk, pray for a walk, instead of trying to swing at the ball. So hope you got the kids swinging away there.
Yes. I mean, the bigger kids, I hum it pretty good.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, because they want it faster. The littler kids, you have to really groove it in there and lob it. But it's a way to get exercise. It's a way to introduce these kids to baseball, because I don't know if kids are into baseball anymore.
I know, because I never see any pickup games. Like, you remember you drive around the neighborhood, you see 2 or 3 pickup games of baseball, but I never see that anymore. Maybe a soccer game. I see one over there at Freedom Park. But,
yeah, you do see soccer in this country with so many Latin American people
Mm-hmm.
who immigrated to this country, and that's a popular sport.
Well, my grandchild is playing soccer all year round. I think he takes a month off here and a month off there, but there's enough indoor leagues and things that he's playing soccer all year round. It's like,
Yeah, and kids, there's a lot of screen time. Kids have way too much screen time.
yeah. Now, do you find that it's a catch-22? I know you and your lovely wife don't go out to dinner that often, but when you do, now when we go out with the grandkids, or when they're older now, but when they're younger, they go right to their devices. You remember we used to have the crayons and the coloring there, or maybe play tic-tac-toe. I remember we used to play tic-tac-toe. But now the kids go right to their machines, which is, I guess, nice that the parents are able to talk, but is that good for you, or do you allow them to, of course, you limit their screen time, don't you?
Well, they don't have their own screens. They have to use mine. So there are times when they want to hear a Tennessee Ernie Ford
I love
song
that. Tennessee Ernie
or
Ford.
Sam Cooke. And so, they type in their song. And they watch movies on the screen sometimes. I'm not into gaming. I'm not a gaming guy.
Oh, good. I never got the calling myself.
There's something about gaming that makes me think of addiction. And I know that I can't make a blanket statement, because
No.
I'm sure there are good games out there. And I'm sure people have it under wraps, but I do limit that. And there was a 17-year-old kid. He had never played baseball before, who showed up at the league.
Oh, wow.
And
What a moment.
I said, because usually a 17-year-old, I would have them bat left-handed if they were right-handed. Just, I don't want to mash them.
Oh, okay, yeah, for your own protection, okay.
Yeah, because 17-year-old kids, they're strong. They're stronger than me. And so he had never played before, so I had to teach him how to get in his stance. So it's very raw, but it's fun, and they have a good time.
That's great.
And I don't keep score. The kids keep score.
Okay. All right, well,
Sometimes they ask me what the score is.
well, that's fantastic that you do that. I tell you, baseball was such an important part of my life. I tell the story all the time, and I've heard it a million times, but left-handed batters have trouble hitting against left-handed pitchers because they're on the same side. Of course, you guys have the same thing with the righties, but I can never hit the left-handed curveball. So my coach, Wayne Prattis, who was left-handed, he says, you got to keep your front foot in there. I used to bail out. They called it bailing out. And so I kept my front end, and he swung, and I hit the ball on the bat at the same time, and I got 7 stitches on my finger. But the funny thing was my mother was watching from her car in the park there, and I was wearing a white T-shirt, and he goes, shake it off, Ryan, get to first base. So I was shaking it off, and the blood was all up and down my white T-shirt, and my mother comes screaming from across the park, what are you doing to my son? What are you doing to my son? And I go, he's trying to hit the curveball. He was trying to hit the curveball, Mrs. Ryan. So there was a doctor there at the game, probably like you have with your parents there, who was a doctor. He took me back to his garage. He had a little setup in his garage, and he sewed my finger up in the garage. Didn't go to the hospital, no reports or anything. He just put 7 stitches in my finger. But I always remember, and I never could hit that curveball, though. Never could hit that. I was what they called all glove, no stick. I was a pitcher and a great first baseman, but I couldn't hit to save my life.
Yeah, I don't know if kids were throwing curveballs when I was playing. If they did, I didn't know it.
Well, just the idea of the left-handed and the left-handed
Yeah.
side, yeah. There wasn't that many curveballs. That's a good point.
And I wasn't much of a power hitter, but I could make contact. I remember a kid was throwing 70 miles an hour, or 60 miles an hour, and we were 14.
That's pretty good at that
I got a
age.
foul tip. I was happy, but then I ended up walking. But I love, the Cubs in '84. I was 12 years old, which is a great age.
I went to 5 games that year. Greatest summer of my life, because I had just gone back to college. I was 23 when I went to University of Whitewater. I decided to, I was dating a girl who was going to UW-Madison, and I got up there one weekend with her, and what are you doing? What do you study? What do you? I'm a bartender back in Delaware. What are you doing? I'm a bartender back, and then I realized, I'm 23. Maybe it's time to go to college. Maybe it's time to go to school. But I didn't go to Madison because I had to be poured into the car after the weekend up in Madison. So I went to Whitewater, Wisconsin, which is more bars per capita there than at the time than anywhere else in America.
That's Wisconsin.
We do a little drinking in Wisconsin, yeah. But had a great time when we were in school there. Wanted to talk to you about now as we zoom ahead to right now. Of course, we're recording this a couple days before the election. The election is coming up on April 1st, and you and I got to, of course, we know all the candidates, or got to know them better anyway. What do you think about 4 people running for mayor in DeKalb? I was very impressed that we have 4 people that are putting themselves out there like that.
I respect these people for, I hate to sound cliche, but for putting themselves out there. I wouldn't want to do that.
No.
Mayor Barnes, I think, he's the incumbent, so he has the advantage. But John Walker's a strong candidate. He's a city councilor already.
Mm-hmm.
Kwame Sanad seems pretty bright. But I think he's an underdog. Lynn Wynn, she's real bright too, and she's savvy. She's run for other offices. She
Yeah.
ran for DeKalb County clerk. So she's sharp too. I think if any one of these people ran, I think you would have a pretty intelligent person. Philosophically, I think Kwame, John Walker, and Cohen are philosophically a little more conservative than Lynn Wynn,
Okay.
but it's really not left versus right on that level anyway.
Well, I noticed they were all independent at one point, then Lynn Wynn, to get on the ballot, declared to be a Democrat. But I didn't realize, as you look up and down, even the aldermen, they're all independents, right? And then nobody really takes a party when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, because the issues that come up at DeKalb City Council meetings aren't really left versus right issues
Mhm.
that you see in Washington, D.C. There are, sometimes they want to condemn a building downtown, or there's a new fire station being constructed.
Well, we saw that with the Second Street building. Remember, they wanted to condemn that,
Yeah, Bill Nicholas, yeah,
and the person fought back who owned it. And
yeah, and by the way, Bill Nicholas, DeKalb City manager, real bright guy.
yes,
Real smart guy. And he kind of runs the city. Kind of.
well, he does. That's what a city manager does. I think we give too much attention to the mayor, right? Because the mayor is still just a cog. Really, the person running the city is the city manager.
Yeah, and Bill, he knows the history of the city too, which really helps. He's not from out of town. And he gives a lot of good perspective. And when you read the meeting notes, the agenda, there's a lot of background information that Bill puts in there. And he's a historian. He gives a lot of history.
Yeah.
So I remember that they wanted to knock down a building on, the city wanted to buy a building.
It was the old Bob Wire factory there,
Yeah,
by City Hall there.
right. Now, parking downtown apparently was an
People in DeKalb are obsessed with parking. I don't know what that is, but,
Now, there is a lot of parking in that public lot.
right.
It's to the south of the railroad tracks, and that was the distinction Bill Nicholas brought up, was when you want to go out to eat downtown, it would be nice if there was parking to the north of the railroad track.
Yeah.
Yeah, the north. No one else brought that up, but that was a distinction that I'd never heard before. And I noticed that too. I mean, my wife and I think we were going to Luna one night, and so I parked by that laundromat
Uh-huh.
in a nice big public parking lot. Well, it's not a problem for me.
Yeah, it's what, a half a
to
block
cross-
walk? Yeah, or 2 blocks, yeah.
to cross the railroad tracks. But what if there was a train blasting through there? So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
My wife and I, you know, a lot of railroad tracks in these parts.
Well, when you mentioned Bill Nicholas, there's DeKalb issues and what's happening in DeKalb, and I'm only now starting to follow some of this stuff, but I hear these theories about Cohen Barnes and Bill Nicholas having some kind of conspiracy and their plans and stuff, and I don't know how anybody could accuse Bill Nicholas of doing anything that's not good for the city. I don't think he's cut that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of conjecture, TD, especially, I mean, everybody has a podium.
Right.
Social media. A lot of people jump to conclusions, and if you go on Facebook, it's just people running their mouth with unsubstantiated claims, in my opinion. Giving their uninformed opinion, being rude to people.
Yeah, the rudeness level is just off the charts.
Yeah, someone told I just don't think you should tell anybody to shut up and be rude to them. Although it's not as if I haven't been rude to. I'm sure I've been rude to people in my life. But
It happens,
so
yeah.
I'm a hypocrite.
And then we have the school board. Now, Becky and I went to the forum that they had at the DeKalb Library. They had the mayoral candidates, and then they had the school board candidates, which again is encouraging to see so many people. I think it's 11 people going for 4 seats, if I have that right? Or numbers to that effect.
Yeah, I'm not up on the school board, but that is very, very important. Maybe more important than the city, because there's a bigger budget.
65% of our tax dollars, right, go to the schools.
Yeah, DeKalb School District, very interesting time. The U.S. Department of Education is getting smaller. I think that's good for the state of Illinois.
Yeah, we stay away from national stuff, but that is interesting because, the Department of Education, for them to defend themselves in any way, I mean, look at the atrocious numbers of our kids in the reading and writing and arithmetic. I mean, there's no way they can justify this huge bureaucracy and then with no results.
Right, and they seem to come out with bad ideas.
Yes. Well, I remember talking to teachers at the No Child Left Behind. That was during the W. Bush administration. And it sounded like a great idea that we'll leave no child left behind. But it created so many barriers for the teachers that they couldn't teach. They were hung up on the 2 or 3 kids that they had to give all their time to, that the other kids suffered,
Yeah.
So,
Children are being left behind.
yeah,
Is
yes.
the result of No Child Left Behind.
The irony, yeah.
What was the result of the Affordable Care Act?
There's another one.
I mean, I don't want the federales do not need to be meddling into our affairs. It's our money.
Mhm.
They're not paying for anything. I mean, they're paying 5,000 employees or 4,000. So the education model is broken and needs to be fixed. So I'm glad a lot of people locally are running.
Yeah, now you're homeschooling. I know that's a whole podcast in itself too, but I think that's very unique, very interesting. But I love the fact that the kids still get to participate with other children, sporting events and things like that. Isn't that how it works, Dan? So if you're a homeschooler, the kids can be on the wrestling team or the basketball team or any forensic team, any team they want to be at the school, right?
DeKalb School District is very, very accommodating. Coaches are great. My kids were wrestling this year. They loved it. So I appreciate the district being accommodating.
Mhm.
A lot of good things in public schools. They have a lot of good resources. They should. It's a lot of money that they're getting. But they have the infrastructure and a lot of the tools that students need. Educating children, very serious. I mean, I buy curriculum for my kids.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. It's real expensive. But I want them to get a good classical education and, you know, just in everyday life, you're teaching your children.
Right, yeah. I'm impressed with the job you've done with your kids and you and your lovely wife Maria to continue to do. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun, like I said, so we can get into a lot of different subjects, and we're encouraging people to send us subjects and things they want to talk about. You know, we're not going to be all serious all the time here. It's kind of like an onion. We're starting with DeKalb and then working our way out, but it doesn't smell like an onion, though. But, you know, we didn't even touch on athletics, too, because that's something I sorely miss, and want to congratulate the DeKalb boys basketball team as they won their state, they tied for the championship, then won the regional championship, and that's something I'll miss dearly is the sports, because people love their sports here locally, and that'll be missed. There, some great coaches, Joe Ryan, and some of the people at Sycamore, and just been great to get to know those guys. And Coach Kavanaugh, who is the all-time winningest baseball coach, now Joe Ryan, all-time winningest coach there, and these guys that go to these schools and then stay, you know, for decades. And I talked to Phil Jerby, the athletic director over at Genoa Kingston, and he's not only seen second, third, but now he's on like on fourth generation of kids that he knows. Your parents went to school, your grandma went to school here. It's just so neat to be in a small town and see generations of families go through like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to miss that connection
Yeah.
with the coaches and students and just watching the drama of those games.
Yeah. Well, one of the fascinating things, you know, a few years back, we started doing girls softball, and we're guilty as charged. We never carried the girls softball. And to watch that in comparison to boys baseball, because baseball, the boys are very serious, get your game face on. Girls they're singing and dancing like they play music in between innings, and the girls will go out there and they're dancing at their position, they're fielding their position, but they're dancing. And they hug each other all the time. And the best thing I saw was at the end of the game, not only high-fived the other team, but then they went over and high-fived the umpire. And I've seen some boys baseball games where they'll actually shake the umpire's hand, but maybe a head nod. But for them to go and acknowledge the umpire as well, it just showed you a little difference between girls and boys sports. Not that there's anything sexist about that, but it's just a different animal. The way they play and their main, you know, the fun that they had. We talked to the girls from the Sycamore softball team when they won the state championship, and one of the girls at one of the rallies early, one of the games, she had her foot in a bucket, and they had scored like a couple of runs in that game. So after every game after that, she would get the bucket and put her foot in the bucket just to make sure that if that's the reason why they scored the runs, she had that covered. But little stuff like that, you know, and then the camaraderie that develops between the players. Just you were an athlete, you know what that's like. Neither one of us started back in the day, but it was just enough to be on the team, you know.
Yeah, that was, the camaraderie there was fun, and but capturing that locally on the airwaves was of interest. I mean, because radio today is so cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is syndicated, or it's, you know, they're playing music which you can get anywhere.
And the voice tracking, you know, because we had people would call from our other station, and they'd say, can we talk to that girl who's on in the afternoon? And I go, well, you could, but she's out in California laying down that voice track, and she's already probably gone home for the day, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like the days of live radio. So, again, we are so blessed to have had our time doing live radio. And
So what have you been doing, TD? How have you been spending your
I've been
time?
floundering. Well, ironically, when this happened, it was a week before my 65th birthday, and also the first vacation I was going to take in 3 years. So that kind of threw me off for a loop. But I went to Palm Springs, and it was great to just get out of the city and think about your life and what you want to. You know, at 65, you know, Dan, that's when people used to retire. That was, I tell you, my grandmother belonged to the over 60 club at Queen of All Saints, because that was for the old retired people, the over 60 club. And now I'm at 65, and you realize just how young it is. But you and I were just talking before we came on the air about age discrimination, and you start looking at some of these jobs and they're going to hire me at 65. Like you mentioned, mail care. I always wanted to be a mailman. There's a great Seinfeld episode where Jerry gets to be a mailman for a day, takes over Newman's route. But those are the kind of jobs. But at 65, you think twice about it. Is that really something I could or should do at this age? You know, but it's out there.
I mean, do I want to get into media again? I mean, is media stable? Obviously, it's not.
Obviously, it's not.
So I have an interview next week with, they need a news reporter, an ag reporter. I know how to do it. I can walk in and do it. My only issue is the instability of it. So, but I do have to work at least another 10 years.
Yeah. Well, getting up with no sense of purpose is really a tough thing. It's like, of course, again, you with the kids, it's a little different for you, but I was waking up and just really with nothing to do, and you get so disciplined getting up early. That was weird, too. So something I always thought I wanted to do was work for Visiting Angels, or Home Again Senior Care. All those are very similar. So I did the whole thing. I filled out all the paperwork for Visiting Angels, and I actually got the gig. And she told me, now, when you go to work, you're going to be wearing scrubs. And that's when I realized that I shouldn't be wearing scrubs. This is not what I should be doing. As much as I wanted to, I always thought I'd want to help somebody and significantly doing something like home care. But when she told me I'd have to be wearing the scrubs, I realized this is not what I should be doing.
So you declined?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the gig, and I just, because I thought, if you're going to do something worthwhile with your life, help a senior, but when it got push came to shove, I aborted right at the last minute there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when do you start your new position?
Yeah, I'll be working at Hayes Gym, for those of you, people will be hearing this after the first of the year, so I will already have started over there. I'll be working the front desk at Hayes Gym, so stop by. We have great facilities for you. We have a workout program. We have pickleball and gym
Okay.
pickup games. My grandkids play basketball over there, so I'm going to get to be able to work there while the kids are playing. So
I got stranded at Hayes Gym.
you got what?
I got stranded there last.
Oh, did you?
This electrical storm went through, tornado warnings.
Okay.
My kids are in karate. I walk into the gym to go pick them up, I want to take them home. And the instructor said, well, per the park district, we have to put all the kids in the tornado shelter. But you can stay out here, Dad.
But the kids had to go. Okay.
Yeah, so I got stranded there. But it's a beautiful, beautiful old gym.
Yeah.
If those walls could talk.
Well, I told my story. My dad was a physical education teacher, but with 5 kids, he was forced to sell lumber. He had to take a real job, as they say. But when he was still the gym coach, we used to go over to the gym in the evenings, and Dad would be in charge of all the basketballs and stuff, but he'd be in a closet, And Mr. Ryan is here, Mr. Ryan is here, and all the kids would follow us to the closet door, and Dad would open the doors and start distributing the basketballs, and of course, played dodgeball as well, too. But that was a moment I always remember as a kid, just how important my dad was, and then he's going to go and get the basketball. He's the guy in charge of the basketballs and stuff. And so for me to go full circle like this, it's great for me to get a job where I'll be working with the kids. They, play pick up basketball over there, and I get to be like the old man, and I don't get to walk to the closet and open the door, but it's like, I always remember that memory as a kid.
Maybe I'll run into you there.
Yeah. Well, if you're taking karate, with the karate there at the kids and
So are you going to wear tube socks
I haven't decided yet on that one.
and the John Stockton shorts?
When we used to golf with my stepdad, he was an old school dude. He had the black socks, so he'd be wearing the Bermuda shorts with the black socks, and then for folks that are old as dirt like myself, there used to be a sock holder. It's like a garter belt for socks for men, and he wore the garter belt holding his black socks up when we went to go golfing, and he didn't care at all. That's something I find as I get older, Dan, that you just don't care as much what people think. Sometimes I'll go to wear an outfit out, and my wife goes, "You gonna go out like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't care what people think. I don't care. You're not a real sharp dresser, if you don't mind me saying that. But does a wife sometimes tell you you're not? I love the line. You're not wearing that, are you?"
Yeah, I have to admit, TD, I've been sleeping in this past month. It's kind of nice.
That's been kind of nice. I got to give you that.
So I'm very casual. I'm all about the hoodies and a hat. I was looking for a good Montreal Expos hat.
There you go.
I saw one in a store and I didn't buy it, and now I wish I would have purchased it.
Now, how about shaving when you're unemployed? Do you still shave every day? You're clean shaven today.
I still shave because I don't like the itchiness of a beard.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty, and I've had a couple of job interviews, so I had to, keep my hair tight.
And that's interesting, isn't it, with the job interviews? You had to go back and put the resume back together and...
I forgot how humiliating job interviews are.
They really are. Gosh, because you got nothing.
So phony.
Yeah.
They're just so, I have to be, the questions are stupid, and I have to, I was on one, I think I blew the job interview because the lady asked me why I would be the best person among the applicants. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm the best person among the applicants because I haven't, there might be an applicant better than me.
Right. It was a great sci-fi. I mean, my whole life relies on it, but I remember George is applying for a job, and he gets midway through the interview, and he goes, "I'm not going to get this job." And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Oh, okay, thanks a lot." And they shake hands, and it's like, sometimes you wish you could just do that. You're like, all right, I don't have a shot, do I? So let's just call it. But
Yeah, I mean, I just, there must be a better way to vet people for a job. And, I don't know. I know it's very systematic, but I think job interviews are quite phony. And they're kind of humiliating.
yes,
So,
I'll give you that. Well, I tell you, it's been an honor to have you back, Dan. Again, who would ever thought that you and I could get back on the airways in some form or the other? And I want to thank you for coming in not only today, but hopefully in the future you can be part of the show. And we don't know which way this show is going to go, but we know we want to keep it light, but also we want to get into serious issues. Like the guy I was telling you about the roundabout that everybody seems to have an opinion about, and we want to bring in the engineer in. We're going to talk to intelligent people about it, but we want people's opinions about it too as well. So it's something we can do on a longer format show like this.
yeah, no, that is very important. I mean, I'm not, I've never started a podcast. I have been contemplating a news channel on YouTube, but there's some planning there, and
Well, we can announce it hopefully on this podcast. We
Yeah.
can announce when you're ready to do that. But you are available. Dan doesn't do Windows, but he is available. Great.